here.
I think actually it's the opposite. I think he had too much preparation.
Maybe.
Yeah. He had so many lines that he was clearly trying to say that he didn't listen and said when J.D. Vance said one of the many things he really hit Kamala Harris on, not Tim Walz, but Kamala Harris, he didn't respond because he clearly had things in his mind. I think the lack of interviews that he has done with national media, with local media, it showed. He needed more reps.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, J.D. Vance is much more experienced at this, at public speaking, at defending himself, at pivoting.
Now, I want you guys to pay attention to something, because we know no matter what is said in this video, it does not change the overall way that the corporate media feels about Donald Trump, right? They still believe he's a threat to democracy and he's evil and he tried to overturn the election, et cetera, et cetera. However, what you do see is that it takes a catastrophic performance from someone on the left for the media to finally acknowledge the truth, right? It shouldn't take something like that to be so embarrassing for them to finally say, oh yeah, Tim Walz clearly was not prepared. I mean, this is an obvious point. And if I was the media, CNN or any of these other corporate medias, they're playing a dangerous game by allowing Kamala Harris and Tim Walz to get away with not doing interviews. Because what's going to happen is if Kamala Harris ends up winning, okay, and we hope that she doesn't, but if she ends up winning, she will prove without a doubt that the corporate media does not need to be respected in regard to journalism in order to get elected. Right? So this is a dangerous game that the corporate media is playing. They're taking a risk. They're willing to tolerate truly the disrespect from her campaign if it means that she will win the election. Right? So they're sacrificing journalism to make sure that Trump doesn't get back to the White House. That's the bottom line here. But when they do that, we have the reactions like this, and we have the disastrous performance from Tim Walz last night. Now let's move to Chuck Todd from NBC.
And I'd also bring up one other issue. I think you can tell the difference. Which candidate does plenty of TV interviews, even with some interviewers like Kristen Welker, and which candidate does not do tough interviews with people like Kristen Welker? It's Tim Walz, right? And Walz totally face planted on that question about his fish story about Tiananmen Square. And I think had he done a few interviews that with the mainstream media, with not just with people that want him to succeed, he'd have gotten better at these answers. I think Vance's performance was better because he faced challenging interviews. And there's no better debate prep for these presidential and vice presidential candidates than a good, tough accountability interview. And I think the Harris-Walz campaign is playing a prevent defense that is, I think there's a reason why Kamala Harris wants another debate. She needs another format. And if they're going to sit here and be afraid of doing media interviews, they need something.
All right, so the main point that Chuck Todd brought up that I totally agree with, and I've been sounding the horn on this for a long time because I'm looking at this from the standpoint of sports, right? And he said that they're playing a prevent defense. Now, what that means is usually when you're winning by 3 points, let's say NFL football, or maybe a touchdown, and your opponent has the ball and maybe there's a minute left and they do have a chance to score, what do? Well, you back everybody up in case they try to throw a Hail Mary or they try to throw the ball at least 20, 30 yards down the field. You don't want that to happen. So instead of trying to blitz the quarterback, you step back. You prevent the long ball from happening, so to speak. And what they're doing is the Harris campaign is they're trying to prevent this knockout blow from the Trump campaign or the corporate media, that is, because they're not taking any risk, right? They don't want to risk anything. And this brings me to the